fact, the people who seem to be able to hit the empathy and do it pretty much consistently had only one empathetic response, their own unique one that felt comfortable to them. When they said it, they don't feel like a phony. They keep it on the tip of their tongue and they use it every single time, no matter what happens. Now, it's different in all families and locales and so on. We went out to study and we noticed one person who could do it really well, and here's how she did it. The kids would come in. Well, I couldn't do my homework last night because my parents made me do all these chores. Her response, oh. They'd come in. We couldn't play soccer because the other kids were grabbing the ball and they'd run away with it. She'd say, oh. How intelligent do you have to be to use that one? But tell me, does that put a person right into frontal cortex? I know some teachers who do it this way. How sad. Others who say, what a bummer. I know a guy who runs a boys' ranch out in Nebraska. When you see this guy, he's got his cowboy duds on, cowboy boots, big old shiny belt buckle. Just put your eye out when you look at it. When the kids come up and have to talk to him about something they've done wrong, stands on one heel, just kind of scuffs the cowboy boot in the dust and looks at the kid and say, dang. Will that do it? Yeah. If you were down in New Mexico, you'd hear, oh, probacito, probacito. If you were down in Texas, you'd probably hear, bless your little heart. Yeah. If you were up in old Bemidji, Minnesota, you'd probably hear, yachis, yachis. If you were in Fargo, you'd probably, ooh, that's never good. If you were in Jersey, you'd probably hear, sucks to be you, man. But please don't write that down and don't use that one, right? But each and every one of us is going to find one, please, and only one empathetic response that feels good to you. Now you get 3 sets of Post-it notes. Serious, 3 sets of Post-it notes. And you're going to write that same one in every one. What a bummer, what a bummer, what a bummer, what a bummer, what a bummer. You're going to get about 150 of them. And now you're going to start posting them all over your room and all over the house and in the car. So they keep reminding you that you want to use that. And you open up the cupboard and there it is, what a bummer. And you pull out the drawer and it says, what a bummer. And you look in the mirror, there it is, what a bummer. You lift up the toilet seat, there it is, what a bummer. You get in the car, there it is. Your kids see it. And they say, what's that? And what is that word or that sound you use to make them think? Oh, just upgrading my skills. My skills are the only thing the Internal Revenue Service can't take away from me at the end of the day, right? Okay. And then you go to bed and you pray. The opportunity. Because I do not want you to believe anything that I told you today. I want you to run some little experiments and find out for yourself. So you're looking for that kid to do something wrong or to have a problem, and you're going to say, oh, what a bummer. And find out for yourself, do you actually have the power to control which part of the brain the other person is using? Do we? Sure do, don't we? Okay. So is this limited to any special age? Any special culture? You know, my wife uses this stuff on me pretty well. This is just a little sidebar here. But one question that usually gets asked here is, it makes sense to use it, but wouldn't it be better if you could have a unique, well, you could tailor-make a special one each time something went wrong so it would really fit the occasion better? And I'm going to say no. Based on all the research on brains and how they grow and how neural pathways grow into the brain and how they grow stronger with repetition, I want to see you use exactly the same one every time. See, I want there to be a little neural pathway in the kids that I work with, A little neural pathway in their brain right here that goes directly from them hearing me say, "What a bummer," to them saying to themselves, "I'm screwed." Because when a kid says, "I'm screwed," does that say my parent is mean? Does it say the teacher's mean? Does it say I've made myself a problem? Does that have anything to do with building responsibility and character? You bet so. But now that I brought up my wife, and I don't usually tell this one, but it's kind of fun. She's so good at this. I hate it sometimes. I remember years ago she said, "Jim," and I should have known. She was so happy about saying this. I just should have known. She said, "Would it be reasonable that you could get the house painted on the outside by the 1st of June?" Well, this is November, and I think, "Oh, sure, no sweat. Yeah, I could do that." She said, "I know you prefer to do it yourself because we had that bad experience with the house painter one time." She said, is that enough time to get it done?" "Oh, yeah, yeah." "Do you want me to remind you?" "No, it just makes me mad. I'll remember. Don't need a reminder." So she said, fine, and she didn't remind me. And the months went by, and 1st of June came and went, and I had forgotten. And the 15th of June, I try to drive into my driveway, but I can't because there's a painting contractor's truck in the driveway. There's ladders all over the house. There are people scraping and painting on my house. I go in and say, "What is this?" And she said, "Well, you said you could get it painted by the 1st of June. I said, "But I forgot." She said, "I know." I said, "Well, how are we supposed to be paying for this?" And she said, "Try not to worry about that." And I said, "Well, I am worried about that." Now she's really got me turned on, right? "How are we going to pay?" She said, "Well, we won't have a very good vacation, but you don't have to worry about the house anymore." And now, all these years later, because we've been married for 46 years, and that's got to have been 30 years ago, all she has to do is say, "Would it be reasonable?" See, and while I was telling that story, all those things that made you laugh were new neural pathways that were created in your brain today during this workshop. Isn't that interesting that our brain continues to grow throughout our life? Okie doke. And I'd like to end our day with a story. Isn't that kind of funny? Gonna have a story? Okay. It's about somebody out in the world, not of parenting, not of education, but out there in the world who seem to do this pretty naturally. First of all, I need to tell you that I've been speaking like this since 1977. There was a time in my life when I had more get up and go than I have now, and I was known to give 3 different speeches in 3 different cities on the same day. Oh, I gave a lot of talks. And I only did 3 things, actually, in my life. The first thing I did was I stood in front of groups like this, speaking. Number 2, drive like crazy to the next presentation. Number 3, stand out on highways explaining it to policemen. I had to figure out how to avoid these traffic tickets. And I thought, who is a wise person that I could consult with? And then I thought about my brother who runs Fay Engineering, and they recreate automobile accidents and plane accidents and stuff. A wise guy. So I went to him and I told him my story. Now listen to his non-empathetic response. "Well, you got 100 hours of graduate level psychology. You think you'd find one thing in there you could use in the real world?" What he didn't know is that I took a course specially designed on how to respond to stupid statements like that. It's all about how you you don't misunderstand what they say, you misunderstand the reason they said it. It'll put them on their ear, right? So I said, "Oh, good idea. I never thought about that. There's got to be an answer in psychology. Thank you." Thought to myself, straighten him out. And then I got to thinking, what if he's right? So I went to talk to my friend, Dr. Foster Cline, the great psychiatrist. And we talked about personalities and how they match up to jobs. And do people who in different kind of walks of life have different views of life? Yes or no? Yes. Now, does a psychologist have a little different view of life than, say, an engineer? Yes. Does an engineer have a little different view of life than a lawyer? Yes. Okay. Does a lawyer have a different view of life than a social worker? Yes. Yeah. And a policeman, what is their typical view of life? Let me give you two choices. Tell me which one. One choice is their view of life is people want to do good, but they make mistakes from time to time because they get absent-minded and we need to help them out. Or is it people want to get by with stuff and we have to catch them before they do? Which is it? Okay. So based on that, came up with a wonderful technique. Please do not try this. I'm not going to give you all the components of the process. But I'll tell you this, when I get stopped now, I can come across like the most absent-minded old dude you have ever seen in your life. So thankful I'm being stopped, otherwise I could probably hurt myself out here driving like this. Thank you. 11 warning tickets in a row in the state of Colorado where I live. On a roll, yeah. And then make horrible mistake. Exceed the speed limit in the state of Texas where they must train them different. I had a big old Texas state trooper put my moves on me so fast, I couldn't put my moves on him. He made mincemeat out of me out there on the highway. He gets out of that car, great big old grin on his face, big old head. Hey, Colorado license plate, I bet you're on a trip. He said, where are you going? I said, well, going down to Florida. Haven't seen my kids in a while. He said, oh, I bet that explains it. He said, I bet you were anxious to get there, huh? Yeah, I was kind of anxious to get there. Why? He said, well, I'll tell you why I stopped you. He said, this is such a bummer. He said, the radar said 73 miles an hour. He said, now that wouldn't be all that bad, but this is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. He said, and when it gets that bad, I got to write you all a ticket. Now, don't feel bad. He said, you don't have to go back to the county seat and deal with it. I know you were thinking about that. But he said, the state gives me this letter that I get to give to you. And he said, look at it. It'll outline all the choices that you have in this matter. And he says, look at that first choice right there, back to Vernon. It's about 15 miles. You pay the fine, it's over with. You never have to think about it again. Then he starts to sound like your school counselor. But I'm wondering if the second one might be a little better for you. Because I'm sure you're anxious to see your kids. You probably don't want to go back. And it just says, try not to worry about this for a couple of weeks. Oh, yeah, he said, just put it out of your mind. And then sometime when you have a little time on your hand, read through there's this little box and match up the speed and the fine. And then you know how much money to send us. And look at all the choices they provide there. See, they're right there, all the choices. See, they will accept, see, certified checks, cashier's checks, money orders, and cash. It's really up to you. And he turns that over and he says, you know, there's a third choice. A lot of people feel a need to contest these tickets. He said, so on the backside, look there, they've outlined all the steps in contesting the ticket. If you choose that, see, step one, step two. He said, you all might want to think a lot about that before you do anything. And look how he lays on a little more empathy on me before he leaves. He said, sure understand a car like this one getting away from me in these long stretches of highway. He said, these big, powerful cars, these straight roads, they get them all the time. Now you all have a good trip, won't you? You all come back, you hear? And I'm going back to my car and I'm saying to myself, I trained that guy. I get back in the car and I say, I can't believe what I just did out there. Shirley, guess what I did? She said, what? I said, can you believe I just got through thanking him for the crummy ticket? That's what I did. But this guy had my head whirling. I'm saying to myself, am I going back to Vernon? No, I'm going down to Florida. Wait a minute. Maybe I can contest it. No, you can't contest 73. Well, I wonder if they rat on you. I wonder if I'm going to pay a fine. I wonder if what's going to happen to my insurance? I'm too busy to put my moves on him. And what about my relationship with him? My respect for him? Still pretty high? Yeah? I haven't sent him flowers yet. But, would you guess he gets a lot less tired out there on the job than the people who try to force their way through? And the techniques that I've given you today, easy to learn, would you agree? Yeah. Work when we remember them, yes? Uh-huh. Change our lives?